looks like... it's...
A little background. My brother and I were both 10 at the time, and we were taking swimming lessons at a public pool about 10 minutes away from our house. We would go for our lesson every Friday evening, and afterwards we would usually just chill in the spa pool until my dad was ready to go. On one particular Friday night, my brother and I were in the spa pool doing kid stuff and whatnot, when I noticed a man sitting directly across from the spa, just kind of staring at me. The man was very tall and thin, and he had a very pointed nose and button-like eyes. He had a very short, thin gray hair, and his skin was unusually red. I didn't think much of this at the time, as I had seen this man around the pool before. I also think my dad may have had a conversation with him at one point. Nevertheless, his stare was off-putting, and it made me feel so uncomfortable that I had to get out of the spa and sit outside waiting for my dad. After that, I began seeing him everywhere. Wherever I was, he was there. The grocery store, the mall, outside of my school, and always at my Friday night swimming lessons. I never told my dad about seeing him. I thought maybe I was overreacting and was very naive to the obvious danger. I remember one instance where I was in a department store with my mom and saw him standing at the end of every aisle we went down. Red flags started going off when I saw him carrying a camera around with him. He would always be dressed in a completely black outfit with his camera bag around his neck. One day I was at the mall with a couple of my friends when one of them pointed him out before I had even noticed him. I told them about what was happening and the way he would always look at me. My friend's older sister advised me to tell security so that he could be removed. I did just that, and as soon as he saw them coming, he got up and left. Fast forward about 2 years or so. I hadn't seen my stalker friend for a long time now, and it was becoming a distant memory at this point, until I got called into the school office because my uncle was here to come pick me up early. I was confused, but I thought this was a last-minute kind of thing. As I was approaching the office, I saw him there, arms open, waiting for me. I felt sick. I had forgotten all about this man, and 2 years later, he has the nerve to come and try to get me out of school? I marched right past him and directly to the receptionist and simply said, "This man is not my uncle." I then walked back to class. My school would sometimes have lunch outside, and whenever we did, I would see him standing somewhere nearby. He would wave at me and try to beckon me over, holding up a chocolate bar as some kind of bait. So these random appearances at my school continued, to the point where my school had to contact my parents and let them know about the situation. My dad was very distraught and demanded the police be contacted so that we could get a restraining order. That's when we found out something truly sickening about this man. It turns out he was a convicted sex offender. The police took his camera and found hundreds and hundreds of photos of me, some of which were zoomed into my bedroom windows. He was arrested, and we got the restraining order against him. And thankfully, I haven't seen him since. This happened about 12 years ago. I'm a former football player, and I'm a pretty big guy. I was in my late 20s at the time, and I lived in a nice neighborhood in Arizona. Needless to say, I didn't have much to worry about at night. I had 2 roommates living with me at the time, so there always seemed to be someone home with me at night. I got home from a late business trip around midnight, Came into the house, exhausted, and dropped everything and went straight to bed. I'm a heavy sleeper, so it takes something pretty loud to wake me up. Around 3 a.m., I hear a loud knocking on my door. It sounded like someone was trying to kick my door down. I had never heard anything like it before. Though it was a Saturday, so I figured my roommates had gone out to the bars and forgotten their keys. Begrudgingly, I stumble out of bed, walk down the hallway in the dark, and noticed that all the bedroom doors are open and no roommates to be found. Must be them. They're messing with me. I arrive at my front door and look through the peephole and see a young woman standing on the other side. She appeared to be homeless, but was actually kind of cute. She had a really baggy sweatshirt on, with jeans and a beanie. Might I remind you that this is Arizona in the dead of summer. It had to be at least 95 degrees at this time, so her attire was odd. She was acting frantic, almost like she was being chased. I was going to open the door to make sure she was okay, but then she started laughing. It was a very disturbing kind of laugh, which stopped me dead on my tracks.
I have to pee. Please let me in.
I just stood behind the door in silence, watching her through the peephole. I wasn't scared at this moment, just annoyed and about to yell at her to get the hell out of here. Then all of a sudden, she just turns around and skipped down my driveway like a child. I just thought to myself this girl was whacked out on drugs or something. I go back to bed, and 30 minutes later, I was just about to fall back asleep when the knocking starts again. Now I'm furious, about to get up and run back to my front door to give this woman a piece of my mind. But this time, when I looked through the hole, it was a man. He was dressed in practically the same outfit the woman had been wearing. He was scrawny looking, not physically intimidating by any means, but he just looked whacked out, like she did. I then see the girl behind the man, jumping up and down and laughing. The guy gets right up to the peephole.
Yo, you better let us in. My girl has to pee.
Not gonna lie, I'm a bit freaked out now. I've seen a lot of situations like this in horror films. So I just back away from the door, go to the kitchen and grab a knife. Then I go back to my room and hide in my closet. I figured if they were going to break in, at least they wouldn't see me at first in the closet, and I could launch a counterattack. 2 hours pass, and there's no more noises, and I fall asleep in my closet with the knife in my hand. It was then that I heard a tapping on my bedroom window. My bedroom is on the first floor and is accessible from the backyard. The lights are off, so I creep over to the window and slowly push aside one of the blinds. It was the woman peering into my bedroom, but not looking directly at me. And she was just subtly tapping the window. Off in the distance, I see the guy, butt-ass naked, doing cannonballs in my pool. I instinctively start yelling, "Hey, get the hell out of my pool!" This brings the girl's attention straight to me. We made eye contact and were inches away from each other. She had the scariest smile I've ever seen. And then she starts giggling. That freaked me the hell out. I call the cops right away and tell them some crazy drugged up wackos are in my backyard and that I'm in fear for my life. I went into my bathroom and locked the door, just waiting for the "here's Johnny" moment. The dispatcher calls back and informs me that the cops were there, but no one was outside the house. They must have took off down the alley when they saw the cops approaching. The next day, I see the neighborhood watch flyers all over, informing us that over the past 3 nights, 6 homes have been broken into, 4 dogs have been brutally attacked, and to keep an eye out for any strange people in the neighborhood. Hairs on the back of my neck stood up straight. But thankfully, I never saw or heard from those wackos since. Since that night, I've installed an alarm system, bought a handgun, and now I sleep great. But the look on that woman's face still haunts my dreams. So this happened quite a few years ago. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, and I was staying at a hotel with my parents, along with my aunt, uncle, and cousin, who's a year older than me. One night our parents decided to go get coffee together at a cafe in the lobby of the hotel. Now it's important to note that it's one of those hotels that span across several buildings. The cafe my parents went to was several buildings away from the one that we were staying in, but that wasn't a problem for my cousin and I, seeing as the pool was just downstairs. At around 8 o'clock, we texted our parents, put on our bathing suits, and went downstairs to the pool. Things were fine at first. We swam around, and my cousin and I caught up on things that had happened in our schools, the relationships we had been in, etc. Eventually, we ended up just quietly floating on our backs, watching the stars. Without even looking over at my cousin, I said something to the effect of,
"Wow, it's really nice out, huh?"
I said it in a kind of weird voice, hoping I would get a laugh out of her. That's when I heard a guy chuckle. I sat up in the water really fast, my face quickly growing red. I didn't realize that I had floated away from my cousin and was now next to some random guy. He was probably in his early 20s, and he offered me a creepy smile. At 13, I was very shy, so I gave a nervous laugh and hightailed it back over to my cousin, who promptly bursted into laughter and started making fun of me, jokingly demanding to know if he was cute, and if he had really laughed at the dumb voice I made. I was too embarrassed to find the situation funny, and stayed really close to her, not daring to glance back down to the other side of the pool, where he was now sitting on the edge. My cousin, whose name is Lizzie, just moved on, chatting about random things as we waited in the pool. She got progressively quieter, though, eventually playfully splashing me to get my attention. "Your new boyfriend is still watching us," she noted. And even though she was still grinning, there was something uneasy in her voice. I glanced over, and sure enough, he was still sitting on the edge of the pool, watching us. She splashed me again. "Don't pay him any attention. You may not know much about guys, but I do. And the trick is to just ignore them." She wasn't exactly wrong. I was homeschooled, and I never really talked to guys who were older than me. In my eyes, she was an expert in this subject, full of worldly wisdom. I watched her face, mimicking her. "Maybe we should call one of our moms," I said, as she shook her head. "No, let's just go back to the hotel room. I don't want to freak my mom out." That seemed like a good idea to the both of us. Her mom was kind of terrifying when she was mad. "We can text her when we get up there." I nodded, moving and pushing myself out of the pool, grabbing our towels and shoes. She made some joke about what was going on, but I didn't hear it. The guy was now standing up, though he seemed to be pretty casual about getting his own things. When I looked back at her, her expression confirmed that she had seen it, but she just kept putting on her shoes, and I followed suit. Walking close behind her, we approached the stairs and began to ascend them. Both of us were a bit nervous, but still holding out hope that this was just a coincidence, until we heard footsteps behind us. A brief glance revealed the guy was just a flight behind us, meeting my gaze with a creepy grin. He didn't seem drunk or high, at least from my sheltered perspective. "Lizzie?" I said quietly, trying to alert her that he was close. "I know. Let's go to the wrong floor. We can loop back around and just go to our rooms, and then we'll call my mom from there." She was moving up the stairs much faster now. I could see the look of anxiety on her face. As an avid reader of mystery novels, it seemed like the best possible choice. So we got off 2 floors early, speed walking down the hallway and around the corner. Just as we were out of sight, Lizzie grabbed my hand, taking off into a run, nearly jerking me off my feet. Before that moment, I had never been legitimately scared of something in my life, but fear is infectious. We heard the echo of footsteps behind us on the same floor we chose to loop around on. I squeezed her hand, keeping up pace with her. We whipped around the next corner, and then the next, until we found the stairwell again, taking them 2 at a time back to our floor. A high-pitched squeal escaped from Lizzie, who at this point was dragging me along. I was scared out of my wits, practically paralyzed, tripping up the stairs, then down the hall of our floor. She jammed the key into our room's door and pushed me inside, immediately slamming it shut and drawing the blinds as soon as we were inside. She then burst into tears as soon as the door was closed. She was crying more from adrenaline than anything, but after she calmed down, she wasted no time picking up the phone and trying to call her mom, who didn't pick up. We then tried my mom, who didn't answer her phone either. It felt like we must have waited for hours sitting on the bed and shivering from wearing our still wet bathing suits. We did eventually calm down, though we were offering each other rationalizations about what happened. Maybe he hadn't been trying to follow us. Perhaps we had just picked to get off on this guy's floor. When you're scared, it's honestly pretty easy to believe everything was just all one big coincidence. Once we were completely calmed down, we decided to do a very dumb thing. Go out to the car to get Lizzie's activity bag, full of snacks and her Game Boy. It seemed like a bright idea at the time, since we both believed that everything had just been one big misunderstanding, and we were both kind of starving at this point. Wrapped up in towels, she grabbed her mom's keys and her cell phone, and we came up with a plan at the hotel room door. Just to be safe, if we saw the pool creeper again, we would lock ourselves in the car, and we'll start calling every number we can think of. And if he appears while we're walking back, we make a break straight to the lobby and find our parents. It seemed pretty foolproof at the time. Now, looking back, this is the kind of dumb plan that you see play out in horror films. Nothing happened until we got to the parking lot in front of our building. We then heard a voice calling to us from down the hall. "Hey, where do you two think you're going, cuties?" We look back and see the pool creep standing at the end of the hall. Lizzie let out some sort of unearthly screech and grabbed my hand, dragging me along before I could get a better look. She yanked open the car door and dove inside as I tumbled in after her, locking the car door as soon as we were both inside. As soon as she caught her breath, she untangled herself from me and pulled herself into the back of the minivan, into the furthest row, and motioned for me to do the same, so I hunkered down with her between the seats. It was then we heard tapping. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the sound of the tapping was unmistakable. Lizzie pulled me tight, not moving, like he wouldn't be able to see us if we just held still. I don't know how long we stayed there, frozen in terror, and I wasn't sure what was worse, the darkness of keeping my eyes closed, or what I would see if I opened them. And just like that, he stopped. Neither of us moved for the next 10 to 15 minutes. I began crying, scared to death, Lizzie just being deathly still, until she began pushing me to sit up. I realized what she was doing a moment later, when I heard her dialing on the phone, and the sound of each of our parents' voicemail greetings. She didn't call 911. Looking back now, we really should have, but at the time, I thought 911 was a number reserved for house fires or murders, not guys in their 20s following little girls to the car. I know, stupid. He was nowhere to be seen. We eventually ran out of the car and back to the hotel, falling into a sobbing heap once again. When our parents came back, they regretted not having their cell phones on and comforted us, eventually convincing us that, though the guy was creepy, we hadn't been in any real danger. I think they thought that was the truth, and honestly at the time, that was what we wanted to believe. Lizzie and I saw him again a few times after that, mostly at night when he sat by the pool, offering us a creepy grin every time we passed, but we were always with our parents until we left the hotel. When he saw us leaving with our parents, he offered us this forlorn little wave that no one but me saw. He then mouthed something to me, and what I think he said was, "See you later, cutie." I didn't tell my parents. It didn't seem worth it to me. It wasn't until years later that I now realize how creepy this guy truly was. I find it hard to believe that he was harmless, and just thought it was funny to follow two preteen girls around a hotel. Either way, I'm glad I never encountered him again.
There's always a reason to be afraid.